This is discussion board number 2, week number 5. And for my chosen discussion board, I actually chose to look at Mammy Kate, who was an enslaved woman who belonged to Colonel Stephen Hurd. Now, as a historian, I'm supposed to be dedicated to reason and sound reconstruction of primary sources, but unfortunately, in the case of Mammy Kate, that is actually very difficult to do. So, here is my take on Mammy Kate from oral tradition. Now, oral tradition, obviously, as I said, has been passed down from the Stephen Hurd family from generation to generation to generation to generation. This has been ongoing. Everybody in the state of Georgia has heard the name Mammy Kate at some point in time. Stephen Hurd was actually wounded at the Battle of Kettle Creek, and when he was wounded, he was taken prisoner. Now, this is where it becomes difficult to use those primary sources, because some historians have him being taken to Fort Cornwallis in Augusta, but then you have other historians who are saying this cannot be accurate because at the time he was captured, Augusta was in Patriot hands and Fort Cornwallis had not actually been built. But for most of the oral tradition, it's always been told that it was in Augusta at Fort Cornwallis. Now, the legend that is so strong is that Mammy Kate would actually endear herself to the British soldiers there at the fort. What she would do is she would go in, offered to cook for them, offered to do their cleaning so they would have clean clothes and things like that. And once she had earned their trust, she had learned of the fact that they were actually going to execute Colonel Hurd for treason. Now, yet again, here is another deviation. You have some historians who say that he was going to be hanged. You have some who say he was supposed to be shot. This is where the lack of primary source documentation in the state of Georgia during that American Revolutionary period that is lacking significantly. If we could actually find some, would actually give us answers. However, even all the archives here in the state of Georgia have all concurred. If it exists, they don't know about it. So when she heard that he was going to be hung, she actually went and requested permission to go in, see her master, get his clothing, and wash them so that he would be, as one historian put it, hung in clean clothes and not in dirty clothes. Well, the British actually gave her permission to do this. They had come to trust Mammy Kate. So one day, this 6-foot-tall, very regal, very upright, said to be a daughter of a king of Africa, walks into this prison with a basket on her head. Well, she gets in there to Colonel Hurd's holding area. The prisoners there help him get into the basket, help cover him up and conceal him so well that she's able to just uprightly walk right back out of the prison with the basket on her head. Now, you may be wondering, how in the world could she walk with a basket on her head? Well, according to most studies of early American history, and especially of early American slave history, slave women were actually stronger than most people would imagine. They were able to carry large bundles for very long miles. So it may not be that unusual that she carried this basket on her head and walked right out nonchalantly, and nobody was the wiser. So the story continues on that she gets outside of the prison. She gets to the horses that she had stashed, which were supposedly Colonel Hurd's beloved horses. They jump on the horses, they ride to Fort Hurd, and on the ride to Fort Hurd, he actually tells her that he's giving her her freedom because she saved his life. Well, the story continues that she looked at him and said, "You may give me my freedom, but I'm not giving you my freedom from you." In other words, she wasn't leaving his side. There was her and her family did not shirk their duties, even though they were slaves and they were granted their freedom, they still felt a responsibility to the family. So in the end, what Colonel Hurd did was actually give her and her husband land that she would have a home right there on his property. And then when she died, interestingly enough, she willed her children to Colonel Hurd's children. And then she requested that she be buried at the feet of Colonel Hurd or nearby. Now, in 2012, she was actually awarded the Sons of the American Revolution Bronze Medallion, which was something reserved for those who used unusual heroism during the American Revolution. And it is believed she is the first woman of color below the Mason-Dixon line to actually receive this. So Mammy Kate was a very fascinating woman, and I hope that maybe one day we can find actual primary source information to legitimately document her story. Thank you.